Welcome to this first episode of Language Learning Talks, and today I'm going to talk to one of my friends and fellow online teachers, Zdenek. He's a teacher from the Czech Republic, and we're going to talk about native speakerism because you are here because you want to speak English like a native speaker. But maybe you want to stick around and watch this video before you actually set goals and do everything to become like a native speaker. So, I'm here with Zdenek, who is a YouTube teacher and has a Discord channel, a Discord server. And in this first episode of Language Learning Talks, which is not any form of alliteration, so I'm still looking for something with an L that goes with talks, we're talking about native speakerism. So, Zdenek, so could you say something about yourself, who you are, and what your teaching views are?
Okay, so I'm Zdenek, as you said. I'm from the Czech Republic, a non-native teacher. I also teach online these days, but my first teaching experience is where I worked for a language school, just like most people, I guess. But then when the pandemic hit, I decided to go independent. And so, as you well know, when you have to look for your own students, what you have to do is to find a way to promote yourself. So I had to get into marketing a little bit as well. So it's tough. I'm still learning how to do that. My Instagram handle is Teacher Zdenek. And yeah, I've got a YouTube channel, same name. I also have a podcast called Zdenek's English Podcast. And you asked me about my views. Do you mean my views on English teaching in general, or
what makes you different? What makes you the English teacher I should choose if I'm watching this as a learner?
Not you, Leontes. Your English is good enough.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I these days I like to teach English through football. It's one of the things I do. I also generally tend to work with higher level students from B2, C1, all the way to C2 level. I guess I like to experiment sometimes. So you said I'm a YouTube teacher. I'm not sure I'm a YouTube teacher, but I do have this thing that I do on my YouTube channel every Wednesday, and it's called a live English lesson. And basically, I always have a student there, and we have a conversation. It's a very, very natural conversation on a given topic. Usually, I let my students choose. I guess the method I use there is dogme method. It's based on like authentic real life conversation, and you don't have a plan. The main thing is you don't have a plan. So you just deal with whatever language sort of appears or crops up during that conversation.
All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to our first question. We're going to talk about native speakerism, what it means, and what are the implications of native speakerism for our learners, but also for us teachers. And there's this very difficult question I'm going to ask that has to do with race and racism, but that's for later. Let's first do what is actually native speakerism. Native speakerism is the idea that native speaker teachers represent a Western culture from which spring the ideas for ELT teaching and ELT standards. Zdenek, what do you think of this definition?
Well, I think there are many definitions, so I've been looking at them as well, and some of them are like, this is an ideology. The main thing is, I think when you say native speakerism, I think it was brought to our attention to point out to the fact that there is inequality amongst teachers, right? So it's one of the isms. Basically, I think the idea is that there's a perception out there in the world, on the internet, that a native speaker teacher is a better teacher.
Yeah, right? I think so as well. Have you experienced that? You've taught in the UK, you've taught in Dublin over the summer, maybe other parts in your own country. Have you experienced that idea that people think that native speakers are better teachers, better English teachers?
Yes, I have. But actually, in those places you've mentioned, Ireland and the UK, I think not so much actually, because
really?
Yeah, because you see that those countries are quite open-minded. And I was in London and Dublin, yeah. So those cities are even more open-minded. You can imagine, like, you've got all those different cultures, and they're like, at the time there was also the law, like the EU law, right? You can't actually like discriminate against non-native teachers. You can't. So
No.
I was given a chance just based on my experience and the qualifications I had, and I just passed the interview, you know. So like I didn't experience any discrimination from the employer, yeah, or anything like that. Quite the opposite. I was actually quite surprised that how smooth everything was, the recruitment process, and the fact that I was treated equally, honestly.
Yeah.
So
That's
this
interesting
is
that it wasn't
Mhm.
so present in the UK and in Dublin. I would think that, they want native speakers as teachers. So a bit about the history. So I found an article in which they explain that the history of native speakerism comes from the idea that at some point the US and the UK start selling English as their thing. And that especially in Asia, for some reason, the idea of
Yeah.
native speakerism is very strong. I don't notice native speakerism in our country that much, but I've seen a preference towards native speakers who are good people, but not necessarily good teachers. So I think that's also part of it. People think that I read this in this article as well, that native speakers are automatically good English teachers because they own the language. So what do you think are the implications of native speakerism for our students?
Well, the students are missing out. You know, the students are missing out. They don't realize that this is not how it is, because they are often sold a lie, right? Like if you have got, oh, I need that native speaker teacher. What if they are boring? What if they are a terrible teacher? What if they are just teaching you in the wrong way, and you're going to influence your English in a bad way? You know,
Yeah.
they will have that negative impact. What if that happens? Has anybody thought about that? Or is it always just about, oh, I'll have that native speaker? It's like a dream. It's like this glorified idea that if I have a native speaker teacher, because it's a romantic idea, isn't it? Like you have this person who speaks this beautiful accent. I love hearing the British accent, for example, and I bet
Yeah,
it's the same
same.
with American accent for a lot of people. So like in a way, I understand why it's happening, yeah, but it's not the whole story, is it? It's not the whole thing.
So
Um,
do you think in general teachers are discriminated against because they're
yeah,
not
yeah,
native speakers?
of course, yeah, of course, especially on the internet, I'd say.
Okay.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, specifically Asia,
Yeah.
I think this is one of those places where you have a lot of discrimination. I don't know. I'm a member of a few Discord group, Facebook groups,
Yeah.
and all I see there is like on a daily basis ads for native speakers only.
Yeah.
Literally, one of the latest ads was that they were they they wrote a really nice ad with like nice shiny graphics, and then a few bullet points like asking like with the requirements. And the very first bullet point was qualifications, and right below that was the first thing they wrote was native speaker. How is
Yeah.
that in what world is that a qualification to be a
Yeah.
native speaker, to just have a passport of the British or American passport, or I don't know, from South Africa? How is that
Yeah.
a qualification? So you
Yeah.
got these ads, and it's just absolute nonsense. Like being a native speaker doesn't mean that you know how to teach.
No.
It doesn't mean that you understand the language, grammar. It doesn't mean that you will be able to explain things. It just doesn't.
No. No, I agree. Do you think we should then move away from the English standard, the British English or American English standard, to avoid this native speakerism thing?
Yeah, it's really hard, right? Because as I said, it's a romantic idea, and it's prevalent. It's like that's the problem, because it's all business, isn't it? Like everybody wants
Yeah.
to sell, everybody wants to make money, right? So that's the issue. But there is obviously something called English as a lingua franca, yeah, and I think it's getting bigger and bigger, and the most users of the English language are non-native speakers after all.
Yeah.
So it is useful to actually be exposed to all sorts of different accents, and to be exposed to let's call it imperfect English, but you know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Like where mistakes are made. But the thing is, like we say that, but native speakers may make mistakes too,
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just all unfair, because often the fact that they make mistakes, it's just sort of like, it's kind of hidden by their excellent accent. They just sort of get away with it, right? Because everybody hears that accent, and you are sort of like disarmed almost by that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned English as a lingua franca.
Yep.
What is that, English as a lingua franca? I mean, I know what it is, but you know, my viewers are here because of the clickbait title, and then they hear English as a lingua franca. What does that mean?
Well, that's the English that non-native speakers use. That's the English that is spoken in the world, like during I don't know, business transactions and company. You have a company that has multinational employees, so the staff talk to each other in English, and they are not necessarily from the UK or America. Yeah, they might be from the Netherlands or Italy or France, Poland.
Yeah.
You name it. And so they speak in a certain way, and that's what we call English as a lingua franca.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, of course. It's a new term. It's kind of what we know as global English, world English, everything merged together into English as a lingua franca. Would you say you teach English as a lingua franca?
No.
Okay. What do you teach then?
I don't think I do, but I think naturally there will be some aspects of it. For example, I'm a big fan of teaching aspects of pronunciation, like what which are called connected speech. Yeah. So there's an argument that you shouldn't. It is not necessary for you to know linking and to be able to link. And I think that's like, I think there's something called phonological core.
Okay.
And that says that, like, the main things you should be able to do when it comes to pronunciation are those that make you intelligible to others. Yeah. And apparently they have done some research and said that linking is not one of them. If anything, it's actually making it detrimental, because it's more difficult for people to understand. So I don't actually do that, right?
Yeah.
I like to teach linking and connected speech and all that. So
so linking would be things like the linking R, where you say law and order instead of law and order. Yeah. Okay. We had a discussion a few weeks ago at the university I teach at, and where we talked about the pronunciation rubric, and I think we took linking out for the first time, because they had lots of Dutchisms that students shouldn't do, and it should be either American or British English. And then we said, but why are we focused on these two varieties of English, whereas intelligibility is the most important part of learning English? Yeah.
Yeah, because we are sometimes, the problem is that the way the status quo is that we are almost ashamed of our accent, the non-native learners. Like, that's the problem. And once we get to the C1 or even C2 level, we want to sound like a native. That's always the case. We want to sound as close to that as possible. For whatever reason, we want to be like that. Maybe some of us are motivated by this injustice of this discrimination we've mentioned, and some people they just really, really fond of the accent, and they just love it.
Yeah.
Whatever the reason is, but this is happening. So you're sort of hiding your own identity by wanting to get rid of all the aspects of your accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point. You're hiding your identity behind this fake identity that it's this British or American person speaking through the way you speak. Have you ever heard our Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, speak English? Or maybe Louis van Gaal when he was a manager at Man United?
No, but I have heard Erik ten Hag speak.
Oh, yeah, Erik ten Hag, of course. Some people make fun of them in our own country. They make fun of those people because they speak what we call steenkolen Engels, which is kind of coal English. It's terrible. It's bad English. But then at some point, one of my colleagues said, why are we actually doing this? Because, they are intelligible. And we can argue that maybe Louis van Gaal was a bad English speaker because he wasn't always intelligible. But that has nothing to do with his pronunciation per se. It has to do with his choice of words. Definitely.
It could be personality as well. Let's be honest. The Dutch are one of the best when it comes to English. Like, let's be honest. Let's be honest here. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what the problem is. Like, if you have a little bit Dutch accent or someone from Norway, Norwegian accent, as long as you're intelligible and as long as the mistakes you make, if there are some mistakes, I've heard a lot of people from Scandinavia make this mistake by saying, using the collocation "do mistake." Okay. I've heard it from so many people.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, yeah, it's a mistake, but like, it's not the kind of mistake that will prevent me from understanding you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So ultimately, these little mistakes are not a big deal. The main thing is that you're fluent, you have clear pronunciation, and you have got a wide range of vocabulary so that you can fully express your thoughts and your ideas. That's what ultimately matters, in my humble opinion. And of course, your listening skills and all that, right? Yeah.
So I have a difficult question, which is not difficult because it's complex, but it's kind of it's a heavy question. But I found this paper, and this paper gave some reasoning behind native speakerism. And this author, Holiday, she claims that it is a form of racism. Do you think native speakerism is a form of racism?
I do. And I do think that, mainly because I have experienced it myself. I think you can only understand racism, or you can only understand fully what it is all about if you really experience it. Yeah. So we could talk about racism towards people who have a different skin color, and I can empathize with them. I totally can, but I can never completely understand it. I can never really get what they are going through. You know what? Like, by experiencing native speakerism firsthand, I think I've become a little bit more open-minded towards other isms, and that's a good thing. So I'm trying to see the positives in it, but actually it's bad because why is it that there is no level playing field? Why is there the glass ceiling? You know, you always see like where you want to get the best job, or just you. Doesn't matter how well qualified you are, still there will be places where you're just worth less. Why is that? And there will be even places where you will be paid less.
Simply and because
why are you
you're not a native speaker?
Yeah, you're constantly reminded that you are worth less. You're not equal. Why? Like, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
It's an absolute nonsense. Your first language, it shouldn't come down to your passport. It should be about your skills as a teacher, your experience, your qualifications, your personal qualities, of course, whether you're, I don't know, patient, or how well you can explain things to people. That's also like about your personality, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and people should be given the chance. That's like, ultimately, I'm ready to prove myself like I did in the UK. But why do I have to jump through all those hoops, or why do I have to get almost overqualified to? And the problem is, like, part of it is us. It's also it's not, because the thing is, like, we don't have that confidence sometimes. You know, we have what's called an imposter syndrome, right? We suffer from it. We just believe that we are not worthy, or we are not good enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just not confident enough, a lot of us. And we would spread these stereotypes, these stereotypes that native speakers are the better teachers ourselves often.
Yeah. And I think the books that we use do the same. They also always have native speakers as in the listening examples, a native speaker, someone from the UK in the video, someone from the UK in the pictures in the book. Yeah, I think you're right there. We do it ourselves.
Absolutely. It's such a complex issue, this, that it's not like you can't even point a finger on one group of people, or who, you know, like on the one hand you could say the natives, they enjoy the privilege, right? Because they get hired more easily. They, like, even if you make a podcast or start a YouTube channel, it is much harder for you to find the followers, because people are just more naturally inclined to someone who is a native speaker. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So like, it's such a complex issue. You know, we just need to talk about this and try to educate people and prove everyone wrong. And thank you for inviting me and just giving me this opportunity, because I
Of
think we
course.
have to talk. We have to talk about this, Leontes.
Yeah, that's
We
why
do.
I invited you, because I know that you have a strong opinion about this. So this is a nice
I
moment
do.
for the comment question. I think so. If you're watching as a viewer, let us know in the comments. What do you think of native speakerism? Do you think native speakers are better language teachers? Would you prefer a native speaker over a non-native speaker? And when you give your answer, don't forget to explain why, so that we can create some understanding. Right. So the same article by Holiday gives some solutions. And one of those solutions is that she says that maybe it's time that we move away from the native speaker and non-native speaker terms, that we shouldn't use them and maybe use some other terms. What do you think? Would that be a solution to the problem?
Yeah. Well, the problem is now that the terms are loaded, right? So it happens all the time with these with any discrimination, right? The problem is like the word itself. There's nothing wrong with it, right?
No.
And it does describe someone whose first language is in this case English, because we are English teachers. Yeah, but it
Yeah.
could be any other language, to be honest with you. I'm not sure I have the solutions, Leontes. It's just a bit.
It is difficult, of course.
It's early days, you know. It's
Yeah.
early days for a change.
Yeah. So my title was, of course, want to speak like a native speaker, or something that native speaker with the word native speaker in it. And I chose this because that, of course, attracts you as a viewer. But Zdenek, what do you have for tips for people who want to sound like a native speaker, but who don't want to participate in this native speakerism thing?
Yeah. Well, you have to ask yourself what. Well, obviously, if you are convinced of this, I'm not sure I can change your mind. But if you're still willing to listen, then you have to ask yourself a question: why am I learning this language? What am I trying to achieve here? And how realistic it is as well. Because like we see all these ads, speak English like a native. In 1 month, you'll speak English like a native.
Yeah.
The question is that really realistic? You could argue, okay, so I believe I've got C2 level English, and I'm a teacher, and I have done English all my life. And 90% of my time, I actually speak English, only 10% my native language, which is Czech. So like I've come a long way with the English language, but I don't think I sound like a native, you know? So like, okay, if you think you can pull it off, good luck. Maybe you can. I don't know. Is it realistic? Have you seen many people achieve that? Aren't you just like, isn't that something that you're going to actually suffer because of? Because you're gonna like have unrealistic expectations of yourself. Isn't that gonna be actually detrimental to your motivation? You have to ask yourself all these questions, right? What is it that attracts you to native speakers?
Yeah. I think that's a good question. And I think you should, study British English if you're also interested in British culture. Yeah. And study American English if you're interested in American culture. And, if you're a literature major, then you might be interested in one of those cultures. But if you're just a regular English learner who encounters us on YouTube, then stray away from native speakerism and try to be an English as a lingua franca speaker.
We have some, like, you might not realize it, but there are a lot of things we have that native speakers don't have. We haven't even started talking about this, Leontes. I'm actually working on I've been preparing a YouTube video for a long time. I'm like, I want to create a video about like about eight reasons why non-native teachers are better teachers than natives.
Cool.
I want to make a really provocative title, because it is provocative, and it's going to upset some people. Okay. But I want to do it because I want to point out to this injustice. I want to just show the other side, show people that you can have a different angle as well. Yeah. So I think we definitely need to subscribe to Teacher Zdenek. That's your YouTube channel, so that we know when that video will be out, so that we can watch that video and comment and have a nice discussion about this.
So that was a question for the learners, but of course you're an experienced English teacher, also someone who's from a non-native English speaking country. Can you share a tip for English teachers or English teachers to be who are watching this video?
Yeah, I can. So I think the number one thing is don't give up. Okay, I know that you may be aware of this discrimination. You may have even experienced it yourself, but that mustn't put you off trying to be the best teacher you can be, and that means you have to compete against natives as well. Yeah, and you have to realize that you're as much worth as they are. So don't don't put them on a pedestal. Don't think they are something more than you. That's the issue. If you have that kind of mindset, it will be a barrier in your progress and in your thinking, right? So don't put yourself down. Don't talk about your weaknesses. Like, talk about your benefits. Talk about why a non-native teacher is a better teacher. Why don't you talk about the fact that as a non-native teacher, you have actually learned a foreign language, so you have been in the learner's shoes? Why don't you talk about the fact that often non-native teachers are much better at grammar? They can explain things better. They can give better feedback. Why don't you talk about that? Like, focus on the positives, focus on the benefits. And definitely you should get qualified. You will have to prove yourself. It is the way it is, but also I think you should never stop learning English yourself. You should keep learning English and try to get to the C2 level, a strong one. And that's important because unfortunately there are a lot of non-native teachers who are not there yet. And then it's easy. They are an easy target. Yeah, it's just so easy because all you need to do is to just see what they have written or what they have said, and then it's the argument like, hey, they can't even speak the language. Yeah, you made a mistake here, you made a mistake there. So I don't think it's necessary to be perfect, but I think you should get to the C2 level as close as possible, or as you should try to get as far as you can. You should challenge yourself and keep learning English.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's very important. That I, even myself as an English teacher at secondary school, a University of Applied Sciences, a YouTuber, I'm aware of the fact that I need to keep on learning and keep on improving my English when it comes to vocabulary, pronunciation. I make mistakes, have typos in my PowerPoint sometimes, but that's just what happens. And I think even a native speaker mispronounces something sometimes and has mistakes in PowerPoint. That's just part of life. We're human. We're not robots. The
difference is that it doesn't faze them. They just keep going. But when we make that mistake, it distracts us, or it sort of what's the word I'm looking for? We suddenly get self-conscious.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, our performance is lower, or the video that we are recording is worse. Like because we in our head, we constantly keep thinking, oh, did I make a mistake here? Did I say that correctly? Shouldn't that be differently? Shouldn't that be different? And I've just proven my point.
Yeah.
And it's natives don't do that.
No.
Because they don't care, right? They just say it the way they say it.
Yeah, I think that's right. You're self-conscious. I also, when
all the time
I'm editing something, I think, oh no, I mispronounced that word. Oh no, this should have been that.
Yeah.
And then
check
I think,
it 100 times. Check it you're checking what you've written in a dictionary 500 times.
Yeah.
But that's actually what makes us better teachers,
Yeah.
Because we just check everything, and we sort of keep our feet on the ground,
Okay, I think we've covered everything about native speakerism. It's an interesting topic. So Zdenek, thank you very much for joining. Thank you for sharing your thoughts and ideas. And if you want to know more about him, have a look at everything that's in the description. There's a link to your YouTube channel, to your Discord channel, Discord server, which I like very much, Learn English Online. And definitely, if you're interested in football, Check Learn English with Football every Monday night, 8 o'clock Central European time, where we, sometimes I'm there as well, where we discuss the highs and lows of the English Premier League. And I name Harry Maguire as my villain of the week, usually, but not anymore because he doesn't play. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll hope to see you in one of my next videos.